We have some really wonderful filmmakers with us today, joining us fresh from the Cleveland International Film Festival. And congratulations, guys, on getting your films shown. It is an extremely, I don't know if you're aware, but it is an extremely competitive festival. And so the fact that your films were chosen for the festival is a great testament to their quality and to your work as a filmmaker. Moving from right to left, we have Joey Didio with Teal Poppy. Oh my, that just changed. That's slick.
Oh, wow.
That's a cool picture.
Yeah, that is me. That is me.
Very good. Joey, do you want to give a little introduction of your work, and then we'll go down, just very brief? Well, as long as we've got this cool slide up. I don't see any way to just not make the most of it.
Do you want me to talk about
Talk about your, how you kind of came into, a little bit about how you came to filmmaking, and then a little bit about Teal Poppy.
I started out as a kid actor in New York. I started doing television commercials, then I did a soap opera, and then I started to do like after-school specials, and I got a TV series, and I did my first independent movie with Vin Diesel. It was his very first movie called Strays, and it went to Sundance, and he directed it, and he starred in it, and I played his best friend. And over the course of my life, I've worked with an incredible, great group of actors that I've met along the way, especially being on a TV series. And I always loved making films, and I loved what went on behind the camera a lot. I liked the responsibility of getting a project, making the project, and then being responsible for what goes up onto the screen. So I always had this passion to be a producer and make movies happen. And I could fortunately see, since 2000, we've made 7 movies, 6 that shot in New York, and 1 in Chicago. And we did 3 last year in New York, the first one being Musical Chairs, which is nominated this year actually for Best Picture at the GLAAD Awards, and it's the award ceremony is May 11th. Teal Poppy was the second movie we did last year, and I'm really, really happy with this. It's been winning a ton of awards, and we're very honored and privileged to be here in Cleveland. And the third movie we did was a movie called 36 Saints, and it's like a teenage thriller, scary kind of movie. We did all 3 of them in New York, and Teal Poppy and 36 Saints are both coming out in the theater in September 6th.
Fantastic. All right, moving down the row, thought balloon, new thought balloon. Okay. Well, Sarah, maybe you could tell us about yourself anyway.
Okay.
So, Sarah Garfield.
What picture did they take? Okay.
How about it?
Thanks.
All right.
I'm Sarah Garfield. I directed and produced a short film called Thumb that is in, well, I guess we just had our second screening at the festival this year. Gosh, prior to Thumb, I come from theater. I spent, I studied theater in college and spent many years directing and producing theater in New York, and then had a micro-budget feature fall in my lap. So I directed that, and then I did a bunch of short films and kind of web pilot things, and then Thumb came about because my manager had been kind of on my case for a long time to write something that I could also produce and direct, and I don't really fancy myself much of a writer. It's really just not my skill set. So I decided to outsource my homework, and I called up the funniest writer friend I had, and I said, hey Kev, do you have anything that is short and funny and like a 2 or 3-hander that is eminently producible on a shoestring that shows that I can direct physical comedy? And my co-conspirator in this crime is Kevin Walsh, and he said, nope, sorry. And 2 days later, the first draft of Thumb turned up in my inbox, and it was so funny that I almost wet myself when I read it the first time. I laughed out loud so many times. It was fantastic, and I knew I had to make it. So I took him to dinner, and I had my whole pitch ready. I was like, I'm gonna option it, and blah blah blah. And I went through this whole thing, and he was like, no, sorry. And I was like, wait, but we're buds. What do you mean? And he said, no, I want to produce it with you. I want to work on it together. And I was like, great. So that's how Thumb came to be.
Excellent. Moving down our row, next thought balloon. Because Marielle, need a slot.
Pretty good, pretty good. Almost. Don't panic. Just read it.
Keep going. The W is a V, and just read it right on through.
That's it. That's it.
Marielle, can you tell us a little bit about how you came to make your film?
So I think it's really interesting because I think we sort of really make films based on where we come from. So I come from the visual arts and painting, and so I went and studied cinematography, actually, at the Polish Film School, where I lived for 10 years and started to make films there. And I've always been really, really interested in documentary. But because I so love what the image can do and how it can speak, my documentaries tend to be very visual, and of course sound is important, but I tend to do work that will have maybe no interviews or very few interviews, and where you know, all the ideas are sort of expressed through the film medium. So I've done about 5 or 6 documentaries. The last 3 have been feature-length documentaries, but I've also shot a lot of documentaries as a cinematographer. So breaking the frame, well, we'll talk about it during the panel. It was really a labor of love, really a kind of a low-budget independent film. We premiered it at Telluride, which was fabulous, and then it's kind of been doing the rounds. And I think, aside from Telluride, this is only the 2nd U.S. screening. And I love this festival. It's just fabulous. I mean, all these people come, and the festival's like super well organized, and the collaboration with the university here, it's great. I also teach cinema. That's actually how I pay my rent. not through filmmaking.
Documentary filmmaking is not notoriously a lucrative.
I don't think so.
There's very few Ken Burnses who could make a very, very comfortable
Makes
living.
for variety.
Oh, yes. But it's a labor of love, which actually brings me to my first question, which is, although you're cranking out work like, you know, at an absolutely amazing clip, because what I was going to say is, you know, it's generally going to take you at least a year, 2 years to make even a short film. Takes a long time. It is a major devotion of your life. How do you decide what is the subject that you want to devote that kind of time to? You know, so that people who are thinking about making films, you know, it's very easy to just sort of get an idea and be like, okay, this is where I want to go. But when you are faced with the reality of 2 years of your life or more, once you start thinking about taking it to the festival circuit, how do you know what it is that you want to do? How do you know what film you want to make? We'll move down the line. Joey?
I always think that the most important thing is the passion. If something hits you and it gets you in the gut. And I'm always drawn to the kind of films that allow people to see things differently than they normally would see things. So that's always something that I look for in a script. And in fact, all 3 of the films that we did last year were very much in that vein. And that's what I love. I love passion. And if something really gets me and I finish reading the script and I close it and I find myself really thinking about it a little bit, a couple hours later, or the next day, I'll reread it again, and if I still have that feeling and it excites me, then I know it's the movie to make.
So what was it in Tio Poppy that made you say, yes, this is what I want to devote my time to?
I was really inspired with Tio Poppy because I was I was at Echo Park, actually, in Los Angeles.
Oh, yes.
And I was walking around the park, and I saw a bunch of kids. I was with a friend, and I saw a bunch of kids jumping on their uncle, and they're going, Tio, Tio, Tio. And it was very colorful, which our movie is, balloons, and it was a birthday party, obviously. And I was with my friend, and I said, God, look how happy they all look. I mean, if you took a picture of that, it's just really a lot of joy. And he said, yeah, he goes, he's all happy because they're not his kids. And thus, the idea of Tio Papi came into effect. And for those of you who don't know, Tio Papi in Spanish means Uncle Daddy. And in a nutshell, the story is about a guy who's living the life in New York City, in Washington Heights, the Latin section of New York City. And his sister lives over the bridge in New Jersey with her husband, and her husband die in a car accident in the first 10 minutes of the movie. And he becomes the very reluctant Tio Papi, Uncle Daddy, to her 6 kids. And at first he does not want them, but then the whole movie is about a fight for him to keep them.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Sarah, how about you? What is it that makes you want to devote a big hunk of your life to one project?
I feel like for me it really is a combination of the strength of the writing of whatever I come across or whatever submitted to me, and the way I feel like I kind of connect with the writer. I've received a lot of things. I think I have a reputation of being able to do sort of quick and dirty stuff on a budget, which is fun. I think it's always more interesting to find a creative solution to something than to just throw money at it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd love to have more money to throw at projects, but I think it's also fun to have to, figure things out creatively. So I do get a lot of things from people who are eager to do kind of quick and dirty stuff, but a lot of them, either they come with money but the script isn't good, or there's someone who wants to do it as a vanity project, which can have positives and negatives. I think for me it really is what's my gut reaction to the script. Like with them, it just cracked me up right and left, and it was kind of a no-brainer. The fact that it was written by a dear friend of mine with whom I have just, we just get it, you know what I mean? You just connect with someone and you get it, and it was really the easiest, most fluid kind of work marriage I've ever had. And so that's the other component, is not just what's the material itself, but what kind of, a working relationship is this going to be? Because especially when we're co-producing it and he wrote it and I'm directing it, you're working with someone else. It's not, making all the decisions unilaterally for the 2 years that it's been. So that's the other piece of it, is, do you connect creatively, but also in a working way?
Marianne, how about you?
Yeah, I always find myself somehow making a film that is related and maybe even some kind of a continuation of the previous project. Now, because I work without a script, it usually has to do, of course, with a human being, and very often, there is a kind of an inherent narrative that really interests me. But I love the unknown of it. So I need to have some kind of a core. Sort of a dramatic core that's somehow embodied in that life or that situation, but I love not really knowing where it's going to go when I start. Actually that's probably the thing I like most. So I couldn't imagine being motivated enough to make a film based on a script. What I really love is the mystery of it. So
it's very dangerous, isn't it?
It is. It's totally scary. It's really scary. Yeah.
It's like, but I like without that. A net.
Yeah. You kind of, okay, time to leap. And so it is scary. Like you have these moments. Oh my God, is there really a film here? So in this case, I absolutely knew there was. Carolee Schneemann is a really, really well-known American artist, exceptionally well-known for her work in the late 50s, early 60s. And, I knew about her work, but it's when I went to her place the first time, it was kind of a period of exploration. I didn't kind of just dive off the deep end, like, without really knowing what what I can film, where I could put the camera. So her place was just so cinematographic. It had all the elements a film would want to have. It was like a set, but it's a real situation. You find it, you'd have to find actors and art directors and all of this stuff. So, and then in that house was the most amazing archive, a kind of an eclectic personal archive. It turns out that she had collected every single slip of paper for the last 50 years. In fact, obsessively collected every slip of paper, not to mention 50 volumes, that's daily diaries over 50 years, tens of thousands of photographs of the American avant-garde starting from the 60s. And I thought, and all of her work is very sort of close to, it's very gutsy, it's very close to her life and life, being in time. So I thought, oh my God, I could sort of tell the story of a generation, of a time, try to connect what she does with what she's gone through. So all of that just flashed in front of me. Now, another story is how to do it. Well, that kind of gets on the way.
We'll get to that one.
But I saw that, oh my God, I knew there's a film here.
And is that when you know there's a film, is when you see the images and the image somehow speaks?
No. I have to know before I start that there's going to be a film. And then I hope. I mean, it's all based on kind of intuition, right?
So in thinking about film production, we're going to jump right into the dirty questions. In thinking about film production, the kind of elephant in the room that nobody ever wants, in fact, that the well-mannered don't speak of, is financing.
Right.
Right? And I know as everybody reaches for so why don't we, but this is also what everybody wants to know.
Of course.
And so to the degree that you're comfortable speaking about it, of course, I'd be interested to know how each of you approaches the issue of financing, and particularly, specifically, how you approach the issue for this film. I mean, you have a 3-picture slate, Joey. That's amazing on the independent level. How were you able to put together a 3-picture deal?
I was very fortunate to find a group of people that had seen previous work that we had done and saw the returns of what we had done with the other films. And I put the 3 pictures together. I think we were very smart because what we did was we hired crews that went on for all 3 projects. So we very meticulously organized it out. We knew we were going to be in New York. We shot all 3 films in New York. So we kept people working for almost a whole year. And we gave them off a month crew-wise. And the only thing that kind of came in and changed were the directors, the DPs, and the casts. So
smart.
Yeah,
Such a smart way to do it.
And that's exactly what we did, and we were very fortunate to find a group of investors that were willing to back all 3 of the projects because it was a come in on all 3.
Did you have distribution before you shot?
We had no distribution before, and then we got distribution on all 3.
So you had investors who were willing to roll the dice.
Yes, very great people who could roll the dice.
Right.
So, yeah.
We won't ask for their address. That's where we're going to draw the line in this discussion. And you formed like an LLC, or how did you do it?
You have a parent company, and then for each movie you open up a separate LLC for each film, and then you put each film through the LLC, and which is has all the unions and all that kind of stuff that are for each separate project, so they don't kind of tie into each other. So,
very good. It's sometimes a lot more difficult to finance a short than it is to finance a feature, because a feature has the possibility of economic return, whereas with shorts it's a lot more difficult. So, how did you do that?
Well, I've worked under a bunch of different models for different shorts. Single investors or sometimes vanity projects. The most difficult situation was an actor who also wrote it and was the sole producer on it. So that, if I've ever felt like a gun for hire, that was the one on which I felt that way. Luckily, that was not Thumb. With Thumb, we kind of, Kevin and I came up with sort of 2 extremes. We said, okay, well, if we're financing this strictly out of our pockets, this is what we each, can afford to put in, and we don't look elsewhere, and we will just have to find a way to make it for X thousand dollars, and it was a very low X. And then we said, if we do a Kickstarter campaign or an Indiegogo campaign or something like that, and we aim for 3 times X, then that's even better. And then we just have to sort of scale our budget according to where we land. We ended up doing it the Kickstarter way, and we're very, very lucky. We had, over 60 people put in anywhere from $5 to $1,000. Obviously not expecting any return on that investment, but we are still in the process of getting them out their rewards and their incentives and all of those things. So we got very lucky, and that got us through post. So it paid for all the production costs, and then, see, if we'd been really smart, we would have had either a separate Kickstarter campaign, or we would have made it for more money, so that things like festival submissions and tickets to Cleveland would have been subsumed by that. we didn't do that. So yeah, those are the kind of extremes I've worked with. I mean, the feature I did was a more traditional financing model, where the exec producer just kind of begged all his friends and family for the money, and it worked. But again, the return on that has been minimal, if any. It's tough, but I think the good news, especially if you're interested in short form, is you can do things for so little money. You can shoot it on your phone, which a lot of people do. So.
Do you have any insight into how one puts together a successful Kickstarter or Indiegogo campaign? Because I know that is a way that a lot of people are seeking financing now. So if you have any insight into that, that would be very helpful.
I mean, I've done both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. One of the other things that I still work in theater a lot. I run a theater company back home, and we're an MPO, so we had to go through Indiegogo because of the umbrella organization we were under. And we ran a not successful Indiegogo campaign a few years ago. And I think the things that hurt us on that was that we didn't have a compelling video. I think it's really important that you have a compelling video that's short, that's to the point, that's funny or engaging, and has some kind of hook. We also didn't have sort of prize incentive levels, which I think helps.
We have 2 new films.
See, just to keep it fresh and to keep you on your toes, we've now introduced 2 more people. I know you were wondering what those thought balloons were all about, and I know now you're wondering what those thought balloons are all about. Yes. But of course, sit under the correct name, otherwise it will not work.
How are you guys?
So this is Martin and Ruben from The Almost Man.
Hello.
And Martin also has Twix and Ties the Knot. And they had a Q&A that ran over at the film festival. I'm so glad you guys could join us.
Nice to be here.
As we're talking about film production. You were just in time to talk about the thing that most filmmakers want to talk about all the time, which is financing. Lucky you. But while you're formulating your ideas on this, Marielle, you're working in Canada, and I know that there are some opportunities there and also some challenges there.
Yes.
So can you talk about the financing of documentary within the context that you work?
So I work in various contexts. So my previous film, Bad Girl, was a very conventional type of documentary financing. There was a producer. It was a co-production between Canada and France. The film had television money right from the start. So that would be the conventional model for documentaries in Canada. But this one was a completely different situation, and it was a first for me. I applied for and received quite a large research grant from our national research funding agency, because I teach in university. And when I say large, it's large for kind of academics, but it's actually not large for filmmakers. And these grants are very particular because they require you to hire graduate students. So now I'm also a cinematographer, so I usually shoot my own films. And I had this wonderful group of students that worked with me up until a certain point. All the research, and then all the collecting the materials, and then the shooting, all of that was done with me and my 3 or 4 wonderful students. And then once we really came down to the editing, and I mean beyond sort of preliminary little experiments and tests, then I got a fantastic editor that I'd worked with before, and she's a kind of a world-class editor, and we've been friends forever, and she was very interested in the project. I could normally not afford to hire her, but she happened to sort of have some time between two feature films. She lives in France, and so she came over and we started to work together. And I also have another collaborator, a wonderful, wonderful sound designer with whom I'd worked before as well. And so those were sort of, that was sort of friends. Like I would, for the sound designer, I've also done some work as cinematographer. There's this kind of exchange of work that happens. So because, I had essentially access to all the facilities, all the equipment is either my own or university equipment. So the film really did not cost very much, but I think it, nobody knows by looking at it what it really is. That was the point.
That is true. I'm sure financing is different for you guys, working in Europe. But can you talk about that a little bit? How it is that, you guys work to raise money for your project?
Yeah, I guess that's my area. Definitely. In Norway is a small country. We have a population of 5 million people, so we have government money to make up for the lack of revenue in Norwegian films. So if you're gonna make a feature film in Norway, you need to have money from the government. So it's more or less 50–60% government money, and the rest is private. So that's how it works. That you have to apply for a government fund, and there's two people that decides.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
These must be two very popular people.
They're very popular for 4 years.
And then they find out who their real friends are, which is not the people they turn down, would be my guess.
So one of the guys just quit, and he's just walking around in Oslo and like, where's everybody?
Wonder where the party is.
So,
is it government funding first, and then you could seek private funding, or does it go the other way?
it goes a bit parallel because at the same time the government, the Norwegian Film Institute, they also demand that you have distribution before you can. So they would kind of give you signals that they like your project and that they want to finance it, and then you have to go and find a distributor. And when you have that, and you have the private part of your budget, then they would, give you the green light. So that's how it works. There's two main systems within the institute. One of them are commercial. So and it works the other way around. If you have 50% of your budget and you can apply, and they only evaluate how many people are going to see the film. And if you rank high, like top of the appliers, then you will get the other 50% of your budget.
And is it the same criteria as here, where it's based on star and genre, or?
Definitely, yeah. So director, star, and and the story. If is it commercial? Yeah. Right. So they have some they will always try to get children's film in there, so they do a bit political premise on it. Yeah. And the other one is strictly artistic evaluation of the project.
No, it's nice that comes into play. Oh, it's a little refreshing, frankly, for us here sometimes. Pre-production is, where you're going to really build your movie, and so I have kind of two questions about pre-production, which are, one, what's the biggest challenge during pre-production other than financing, which is always the biggest challenge for filmmakers, and then also, what can you do during pre-production to make your life easier going forward? right? So, because I think that's something that filmmakers don't think about enough, is like, how can I make my production, how can I optimize my production from decisions made early on? Why don't we reverse order and let Ruben speak to this again?
Yeah, pre-production, yeah. I know it's, we talk a lot about, try to find the things that are most important just for the project, creatively for the project. What do you want to protect, and then not like in general, but for this project, like for the Almost Man, for example, it was very important to have the time during shooting and preparation with the actors. It's kind of a low-key, low-budget film, and the most important thing was to have the script and the actors work.
Rehearsal time?
Rehearsal time and shooting time, and so we prepared, we prioritized those things, and then we kind of put that on the board and make that like a thing for the project and protect that, and then it's, I guess, good plans and making decisions.
I really think that when you write it, that's where you start deciding what kind of film you're making and how expensive it'll be. And we have a small production company together, and we knew that if we're going to do this movie, it's going to be small. So when I wrote it, I had that in mind, and instead of like cursing that, it became kind of a creative thing, where you understand that, okay, I need to focus on a relationship, I need to focus on people, I need to focus on emotions, and not on the moon, not exploding the moon. Those kind of things, they gotta go, and I think that helps the budget and also helps the creative process, building the movie in a good and economic way.
So writing to your limitations.
Yes, writing. I mean, that's for me, or us at least, where it all starts, and from there, when you have that in mind already, when you write, I think it just continues to be that energy in the project when you start working with the actors.
Sure.
It just
Mariel, I think it's a little different in documentary.
It's completely different.
So
in
how is it
documentary.
different? Talk about that.
Well, it's unclear what the notion of pre-production is in documentary. Anyway, I always say that the big difference between documentary and fiction is actually the methods we use and not so much the results. I mean, a lot of people consider that Breaking the Frame is not a documentary, that it's somewhere between fiction and documentary. I don't know. I mean, I think it's about how we develop the work that actually changes the work. So, when I had to write, of course I had to write. We have to write in documentary to get any money. How else would we do it? So as opposed to, how you'd write for television, which would be very inspired, I think, by methods used in fiction, in this case, I had to write something completely different, and I'd never really written the kind of proposal I had to write for this National Research Council. It sort of had to describe what I'm interested in as a filmmaker, but not describe the subject, but how I'm going to approach it. Like, I had to sort of figure out why it is that I actually want to make this film. And so I wrote a lot about the issue of sort of recreating a narrative based on somebody else's writing of that narrative, right? Journals, photographs, works. So I wrote a lot about, I was really interested in memory and how we remember things and how we maybe fictionalize memory, but I also wrote about what it is for somebody to find somebody else's journal and then try to recreate that, right? So I guess that also was sort of very connected to how I began making the film, except that in documentary, I began making the film because James Tenney, who's this fabulous composer who was the love of Schneemann's life, was in MoMA and was playing to Brackage's early films, and I just, you know, found out about it. Said, okay, we're going, guys. We gotta go tomorrow. We gotta go be in New York. We gotta film this. This is my only chance. And it was just sort of intuition that I started then, because then he passed away 3 years ago, and I would have never had the material that. So things kind of run away from you in documentary, and of course some, you know, when you have written this thing, which is not a script, but it's something, it first of all, it forces you to clarify what your thoughts are, but it also, you kind of tend to stick to it, and you therefore, it's your map. It's just a map. And then you have to kind of get on that road, and then you have to sort of decide which way to go. But a lot of it is really intuitive.
So really, it's more conceptual than logistic when you're talking about it.
Well, I mean, I knew that I was making this film in extremely restrictive conditions. You know, a group of relatively experienced students. I mean, yeah, one subject, one place, magic, and then the rest is just sort of found materials and sort of different ways of kind of expanding it. But I mean, it's not like, yeah, it's not like going to the moon and blowing it up. There's difference. But I mean, I was conscious of that, and I knew that I had enough elements just with that, essentially one core location and essentially one core character, and this unbelievable musician, because he's a character in the film. He's like a magician, and it's all of his music, which is stunning. So, you know what I mean? It's like, it's workable, it's doable.
Yeah. Sarah, as somebody with a strong theatrical training, what's the most important part of pre-production for you to get you ready to go out and shoot the film?
Something that I learned very, very quickly on the first thing I ever shot was, again, coming from theater, I've never been to film school, was really making sure that my DP and I are seeing the same film. And that, you know, if he or she is talking about lighting in a certain way or using a certain lens, and I don't know what that means or what difference that's going to make in what ends up on screen, asking for an explanation. Or the other thing that I found very, very helpful is, you know, storyboarding on film. So really, essentially shooting the movie, or at least shooting any kind of complicated shot or anything unusual ahead of time, even if it's just, you know, with me and that person or the AD standing in, and making sure we're literally seeing the same movie, because that bit me in the butt once or twice on the feature. And after that, I sort of insisted. I would take my cinematographer to coffee every morning before we went to set, and we would talk through every single shot that we were going to do. And so when I ended up working with someone new, I had a new cinematographer on Thumb, and he and I just went through and literally storyboarded everything on just a dinky little point and shoot kind of camera. But it was incredibly helpful to me, and I was very, very pleased with the results. And when, you know, working with someone that closely, we've developed a wonderful shorthand, so that gave us the flexibility when we were on set, and we were like, oh, what if we just jump in and try this? Or, you know, no one's looking at that street, let's just go steal something really quickly there. We had that trust and that fluidity of conversation and of, you know, a commonality in terms of what we saw the film being. And again, coming from a theater background, that was incredibly helpful to me. I mean, the working with writers, working with other designers, working with actors, I've been doing forever, but right. the camera was new. So.
No, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It really does. Joey, here you produced like 3 movies in the course of a year, which is, I'm still stunned, and I know I keep mentioning it, but it just is a remarkable achievement. Your pre-production must have been pretty tight.
Yeah, I actually really like pre-production. I think what he said was right on the money. I think that you have, when you know the budget of the movie, you have to make sure that the script is very lined up with the budget that you're doing. Take out this, change this, move this. And then, you know, although I do wear the hat of producer, and people would say I was in control as the producer on all 3 of the projects, the reality is that I put a lot of people around me that I trust. And I let them do their job. And I'm always in sync with the director that we choose to do the movie. I let the director always pick his DP, because I know that that relationship is, if I'm on the page with the director, I know that his relationship with his DP is going to get what I need to do. But I really, as the leader, if you want to say the leader of being the producer, once I know that the script is tight, that we're capable of doing it for the budget or the amount of money that we do have, once I'm on page with the director, I really put let the people do their job. I'm really strong about that, from the hair, the makeup, the wardrobe, the art department, the locations. I let them all do their job because they know kind of what I'm going to expect. And then what they said as well too, I really like to do, especially with like Teal Poppy. We had 6 kids, 5 that were under 16 years old. We rehearsed them. We rehearsed them for a week. We bought them all out for a week, and we just rehearsed them so that when they got onto the set, it moved. That's my pre-production.
That's very interesting. What's the biggest challenge for you during pre-production?
Pre-production?
Yeah. Other than raising the financing, obviously. Scheduling or casting.
No. I have a great casting director.
So basically, the message is put good people around you, wind them up, and let them go.
True. And just, I guess, just making sure everybody's coming in with what they have to do.
That's fantastic. I'd like to move on to shooting, and then we're going to leave some time for questions. As we have 2 producers and 3 directors, director-producer kind of. As producers, how do you kind of set up your production so that the set runs smoothly? What are the kinds of things that you do to ensure a smooth-running, well-organized set?
Who do you want to go first?
Oh, either one.
Go ahead, you guys start again.
Oh, well, it's a good question. I also was one of the producers on Twigs and Ties to Knot, which also Martin did, and that and The Almost Man is 2 very different films, because Twigs is a commercial film and The Almost Man is a more independent, low-budget film. So definitely 2 different ways of working, and on the big budget film, it's, you have the normal staff and try to get the good people to run it, I guess. And on the it's more difficult on the independent film, and I think one of the big challenges is that you don't have the money to always pick the good people or the best solutions. So you have to compensate for that in a way, and with the actors, maybe you can't pay them full days and stuff, so you can't clear their schedule, and so that gives you a scheduling problem all the time. You have to, if you have to postpone the day, you can't, the trouble's just building up because you don't have the money to solve it. So you need then it's more important to pick the good people and build what do you say, a culture between the staff to have a good that everybody are motivated for the project and know. I think and then the most important thing is to make crystal clear for them what they are participating in. That this is the amount of money for salary. This is what we're going to do, and be honest on that. Don't play it down to get them on board. Just be, this is what we're doing, playing out. And then if they say yes, then you probably have a very dedicated, loyal staff member. So I think that on the low budget thing, that's shooting. That's the most important thing, to have the dedicated people that would go all the way for the project.
Good. Joey? As a producer, how do you ensure a smooth running set?
Well, always something happens on set that you can make sure everything is running really smoothly, but there's always something that happens on every set that comes out of nowhere.
Right.
And I think just if you're running a smooth set and you have the right people around you, and you have the trust, and you've created that, things get worked out, and everybody works together as a team. And that's what I like. That's the kind of sets I like to be on, and I like to have, it's almost like it's a family, from co-producers. It's not just me; it's the co-producers, the associate producers. Everybody has equal respect for each other, and we all work together.
So what was the what was the unexpected event on Tio Poppy that came up that sort of threw you a curve?
On Tio Poppy?
Yeah.
We filmed in a pretty tough neighborhood in the Washington Heights section of New York City. And we were always on point because there were 6 little kids. You know, I mean 5, 6, 2 at 10, a 15, and a 16-year-old. So sometimes the kids wander. We have to be very, very careful that the kids didn't wander. And you know, so we were just, you know, on point with that. And we wanted to get the kids, you have a certain amount of time that you could work with kids. We wanted to make sure that they were they weren't tired, they did their job, they went to school,
right,
and they went home. They came back the next day.
Yeah, kid wrangling, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I've had that.
They like to wander when they're not in their environment.
They're just going to the store, it's okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, do you want to talk about as a director running a set? And because it's a lot different. The producer sets up the logistics of the shoot, but the director actually has to, in a sense, run the set. So can you talk a little bit about running the set?
Yeah, I think, I think these guys have made some really good points. I think the thing that I liked most about my crew on Thumb, and they were incredibly hardworking and incredibly dedicated, and most of them didn't have a ton of professional credits. Most of them were grad students at USC. A couple of them were undergrads. Even some of my keys. I had one key who was an undergrad. She was I think she had just finished her senior year. She was about to be a senior. So these people didn't, they were green, but they were very talented and very hungry. And 9 times out of 10, I'm going to want to work with someone like that than someone who's, crabby because they're not getting their day rate. I think it just makes for a better team. And so that was one of the ways we circumvented a very small budget. But I do think it's really important to surround yourself with people you trust and then try to stay out of their way. I mean, I'm not going to tell my DP what lens to use. I'm not going to, tell the makeup person exactly what shade of eyeshadow to use. You just, you have to have a little bit of trust in those people. I think the other thing that makes for a smooth set, or makes for a smooth set, but I think has always been important to me is when you're on set, you prepare, you know everything you want going in, and that for me gives me the I guess confidence to put all of that aside and just see what's in front of me and see what's on the monitor and watch the performances and look for the happy accident, right? There's always something that goes wrong, but there are also a lot of things that probably go right. And if you're looking for those and if you're open to those, even if they're not what you planned and not what you're counting on and not what you think you want, you might come up with something even better. One of the lines in Thumb that consistently gets a really wonderful response was something that the actor improv'd in a chemistry read with the lead, and it was so funny. At the end of it, I mean, of course we cast her, and then I turned to Kevin, and I was like, "That's going in the script, right?" And he was like, "Yeah, of course." So, if you're open to those, it was the Hot Pockets line. It's a lot of fun, and I think everyone gets that, and if they feel like they're part of that collaborative process, everyone has a greater stake in the outcome. And that, speaks to what you were saying, that it makes people more committed and more excited to be on your set.
How about you, Morton?
Yeah, I agree. And like I said earlier, pre-production is really, really important. And I think shooting is kind of the harvest of what you do. And I mean, when you rehearse with your actors really well, on The Almost Man, our last movie, we rehearsed on location, a house mainly, and we walked around, and you create this kind of home thing because you spend time there and you walk around and the DP is there and watching, you discuss, and you sit down, you talk about the scene, which makes, when you start shooting, everyone feels at home, the energy is familiar, and I think that is key to having a good atmosphere. I am safe. I think I radiate security, and that makes the set more comfortable and things go smoothly. I think that's something that should be on the board just as much as the practical stuff,
Sure. I'm always interested from a director's standpoint. Do you like to do a lot of takes? Would you rather do fewer takes? You know, how do you feel? I know each directors are different in this regard. So can you talk about that a little bit, and then we'll ask Mariam to talk about documentary, which is a little bit different. So directors, you know, what is your perspective? Do you like to move quickly on set? Would you rather take your time? I mean, that, you know, in some ways is really an essential issue for a director.
Sure.
So,
I would always prefer to rehearse more and shoot less, particularly when you're shooting on film. I think that's always more effective. Obviously, you don't always have the luxury of having your location for more than the one day that you're shooting. That sounds amazing to get to like do all that. But that is my preference, is to rehearse more. I just feel like you need fewer takes when you do that. But again, that's probably my theatrical background rearing its ugly head.
Martin, how about you?
Yeah, I think maybe it depends on what you're making as well. I've done TV stuff without rehearsal as well, and you have to just be really quick because you're shooting like 5-6 minutes a day. But I prefer to kind of rehearse really well, obviously, as I said, and sometimes it takes few takes and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there's no rule to it, I think.
In this film, we shot every scene all the way through, so the actors played the whole scene for every take. So that was a bit different way of working on this film.
Yeah, some of the scenes are like 7-8 minutes long, and that's a take is that long, so it's piece of kind of theater in front of you all the time, which makes the process a bit different because you're talking about long energy lines and long, you know.
It's a brave choice in a way.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a recipe for every film, but it was interesting in this one. So yeah, it depends on what you're making. I mean, yeah.
And Mario, as a documentary director.
Yeah, so we would never use that language running a set, right? But there are really specific. I mean, we always talk about documentary as one thing, but there are just so many different approaches. And if you're doing a journalistic piece for television, it's very different than doing another kind of documentary where you're really interested in being there, being ready, having usually a tiny crew of people that work like one body and that make whoever is in front of the camera feel extremely comfortable and at ease, which usually takes a little bit of time. So that's the kind of filmmaking that really interests me, is that you kind of set up a situation. So in that sense, it's not unlike fiction, except these aren't actors. But then you plan it in such a way that you're sort of hanging around and everybody gets comfortable, and this, or the situation's already rolling, and then comes a moment where everybody looks at each other and you go for it. And it's, in the best of situations, it's like some kind of a magic choreography where you just can't believe that three people can be so in tune with each other and with the situation that you actually you're actually sort of narrating. I mean, there's a real point of view. I mean, there's some people that will put 3 cameras there and will shoot everything, and will have 400 hours of material. But I don't like that method. I really like a kind of a method where you make really serious decisions on location. We don't call it a set. We call it. we say in the field. But in fact, you think about it. Nobody is. Like, you put a camera and sound there, people change, right? So in a certain way, there is a kind of a performance element, like people perform themselves in a way in documentary. And so there, it's hard to draw that line between fiction and documentary, but, you then go...
stories, right?
Of course. Yeah, it's like the method of doing it is very different. Yeah.
I'd like to ask one more question, then we'll open it up to the audience. And this question is about, in some ways, if financing is the root of everything, then I think the next important issue aside from making the film itself, is distribution. And how you go about addressing the challenge of distribution. Joey, you got 3 films. Can you talk about your strategies for distribution, how you went about working, or how you are going about working on that? What role does film festivals play in this?
Film festivals are great. This film festival in particular is a fantastic film festival. I've been to Sundance, I've been everywhere. This one is very, very, very impressive, and it's run real like a tight ship. And it's really an honor and a privilege to be here, and I'm really grateful that we brought Tio Poppy here, and I'm having a really great time here. I don't worry about distribution. I feel that if you make a great film, you're going to get distribution. So I think that it's when you decide to make the movie, and you're giving it 180%, and you've got the right people around you, and the set's running good, and you're going to make your movie. I believe that if you're making the movie for whatever price that you have to make the movie, make the best possible movie, and I know that distribution is going to follow. And I've never had a problem with it.
Do you take it to markets, or how do you?
Yeah, sure.
Do you find a producer's rep? What's your strategy?
I do that. I first make the movie kind of the way I would like to see it. I like that responsibility of being responsible for what's up on the screen at the end of the day, because I know that I'm going to make a great film. And then I've met so many distributors and film markets. I kind of have an idea of who to go to with the quality of picture of what we're doing. So you
contact them independently?
Yeah, then I go and I sit with them and I go, hey, listen, I think I have a picture for you. And that's how I work it.
That's an interesting approach, as opposed to taking to AFM or, you don't do that.
No, but I have somebody that I go after. I say this is the right person for it, and then they go rep it at AFM.
That's a very interesting approach. Sarah, I know you made a previous feature. How did you?
I mean, I did. The question sort of doesn't apply. Our exec producer made the unilateral decision to not do any festivals, and he wanted to try to get a distribution deal on his own, and he got a couple of cable deals and a couple of direct-to-DVD at Netflix, and it's on sale at Walmart and stuff like that. But it was obviously his decision to make. But so I've never actually faced that particular challenge. Although in the ramping up to that, I learned a lot about some of the challenges and pros and cons. But yeah, pass.
Marielle?
Yeah.
For documentary, it's a real. It can be a real challenge.
Yes, because television is really still considered to be the principal way to finance and distribute a documentary. So it changes from project to project. As I said, my previous one was made specifically for Canal Plus and a public television in Canada. But for this film, we're just in sort of 6 months. So my approach is like Joey's. I mean, I just do it how I feel it should be done. And then I sort of see what happens. So this film has a sales rep, and once we're finished our festival run, then we'll be approaching distributors. But I know that the actual market for this film is what they call the educational market, and we always associate education with being sort of something boring, but I don't think it's like that anymore. So I think universities, museums, galleries, art house, cinemas, this is where this film is going for sure, and I'm very confident that it'll find its place.
Very good. You guys need to get distribution before you get your financing, huh?
Yeah, but actually on this film we didn't have that. Distribution for The Almost Man has been quite difficult actually. The story is that we approached the writing a bit experimental, so we applied for short film money, which we got because of Martin's prior films, and then just trusted in him with some short film money, and we shot the feature for that, and then we went knocking on doors for distributors, and we financed the post-production. Where there's 5 distributors and 2 or 3 of them are quite kind of blockbuster big ones, Scandinavian companies. And luckily, one of them really liked the teaser that we were running around with, and so we managed to get money for the post-production. But still, it's a dramedy, so it's kind of it's been hard to find a way to sell it for the audience, because even though we had the biggest distributor in Norway, that doesn't mean people are gonna go and watch the film. And our challenge was maybe a bit that they have, for independent film, they kind of have their way of distributing, you know. They have James Bond, they have Batman, you know, and they have a certain way of working with their films that works for those kind of films, and then they just want to wrap our film in that same mold and do the same. That's not, that was not so good for this film, and we kind of put a bit trusted in their market share and stuff like that didn't play out well. But we knew we had to go for festivals first to get publicity in Norway. So luckily we were in Karlovy Vary, which is a Czech Republic festival, and we won some awards, so we got some publicity. Still, it's been, dramedy is really hard to get out, so. Yeah.
Okay, I would love to take some questions. I saw there was a question over there.
You started to answer a little bit.
Didio.
How often do you find yourselves, and I guess maybe a little different, but similar, when you're putting your pre-production together and your budget, and you say, okay, this film is going to cost X. How often do you try to, though, find out what the revenue stream is later? Because then if you see what the potential revenue stream is, you might expand or add more scenes or quality of action or whatever to the set and the script and expand it so that you say, oh, more people like this than I thought. How often do you find each one of you, maybe if it makes a difference, to try and see what it's worth before you start shooting it, because you might expand capacity and quality of the drama or whatever, and say, oh, we can get a little bit more money, or pre-sell foreign or something before domestic, and then change the script to make it maybe more of what you thought, your dream, your vision.
Are you asking any of us?
Because I think it applies differently for each.
Well, for me personally, I pick a price and then I make the best possible movie that I could possibly make. So like with Tio Papi, I kept it at a certain, I'm talking about Tio Papi because Tio Papi is the one that is here.
Yeah.
We kept it, we came in under budget actually, and we made Tio Papi.
Do you mind asking what?
No, I don't like to talk about the budgets. That's the best. But that's okay, everybody asks what a budget is, wherever you go. But we came in under budget on Tio Papi. And I think it's really important that you really, I personally go with the head frame of this is the kind of money I have to spend on this movie. It's my ship. I can't go over. I don't want to go under, but I can make it look phenomenal. The locations. I can exceed my expectations with what I want to do and get it on the screen. And then we've made it, and it always takes care of itself. So I don't like to play with money, especially once I lock a budget and I'm going forward with it in terms of making a movie. I don't want to go, to me that's a little dangerous to kind of want to go a little higher if I'm in the middle of filming or I'm going to go into filming. I like to make sure that the locations are right on the money, the script is going to come in for the budget that we say it's going to come in or under, and make it look like that up on the screen. And I think that you hit your home run when you do that successfully. Does that answer your question?
Well, kind of, but then you're not sure if you're going to sell it. So
no, I'm never uncertain if I'm going to sell it.
If you try to know what your revenue stream is in advance, then maybe you can say, okay, I know where my money's coming from. Now maybe I can do a little more.
Well, it might sound a little cocky for myself to say this, but I'm not worried about that because I know what I'm going to make is going to be sellable.
Okay.
And I'm certain of that. And it sounds cocky, I know, but the truth of it is that I've always, knock on wood, I've always been able to, but the reality is that it's always exceeded my expectation.
Yeah. Other questions? In the back?
This is for anyone who has an answer. I was just wondering maybe how like the internet and social media played into it. of, I'm sure that, you know, you put your, like, trailers, these films online and all that. Sarah talked about using Kickstarter and Indiegogo. But I was wondering if there's anything notable that social media really helped or that it didn't, just kind of like getting the word out about the films.
Does anyone want to speak about the role of social media? And
we thought a lot about it, and I think me as a producer and Martin, we had really wanted to try that and make that work. But as I said, we had a big blockbuster distributor that wasn't so interested in it, and they did kind of the normal TV advertising and street trams and stuff like that. So we did a halfway stunt that worked a bit, but we didn't. It wasn't wholehearted the strategy for that. So, but definitely at least in Norway, there's a big potential and things are changing a lot right now because it's harder to sell art house films, at least in Norway, and I think all over the place. So. You can't have the same marketing budget on art house films anymore, and you have to be clever. And I think you can compensate for that with smart marketing strategies using social media and stuff like that. But you need you need smarter people than us as filmmakers that really know social media and can play out a good strategy. And that strategy has to be connected on your content, on your film. To work in a proper way, because you have to get out what your film is about, and that's so you need somebody that understands that communication.
Yeah, our film is like Ruben says, quite art film in a way. It's not that blockbuster thing, and what we experienced was when it was distributed and marketed like a more regular film by the distributor, when people went into the movies, they didn't get what they thought. Mm-hmm. And that is really bad on the social media platform, because that spreads really quick. So you don't want Facebook saying, what is this? And, you don't want that. Mm-hmm. So the social media thing starts really early, mm-hmm. because it's just a part of everything. Mm-hmm. So we ended up kind of in a bad situation because of the marketing, which was just wrong.
Mm-hmm. I think it's like a Danish marketing guy that told me the other day that things has changed so much that people, the same day as they've seen the film, they would like it or unlike it on Facebook. So that changed a lot. Before you could, you could go weeks before people knew that your film sucked. So, and that means that today you have to be very specific on what audience you get in on your film the first week. You have to have your target audience down to the really, the one generation. Target audience that is you want to see your film, and if 60% of those like your film, that's good marketing. But if you invite everybody in, then 25% is going to like it, and then that's bad marketing. So you kind of have to be a lot more specific than before.
Is social media pertinent to what you do, Marianne?
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that it's very true that you at least have to have in mind who you're speaking to and who your audience is going to be. It's very important also to represent the film like it is.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I think that's really important.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Be honest. That's always good.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions, Josh? Yes.
This is a question for Sarah. As you came from theater, right? What are differences between film actors and theater actors?
No, it's a great question. Wow. I think the processes are more different than the actors per se. Most actors that I've worked with have, if not formal training, at least experience in both, as many professional actors I think do and should. But in theater, your rehearsal process is the bulk of it. So you have ideally 4 or 5 weeks, in which you're working to get the kind of performances you want, you can be much more layered and slow in a theater process, and you can really build up trust with your actors. Whereas in a film process, I think the reason I like to work with certain people over and over again, and I think a lot of directors have this, you develop a shorthand, and you can refer to, oh, you know, remember how we did it in the last one, and they get it in a minute. And as we were saying, time is such a precious commodity on set that really helps. In terms of, do you mean sort of what's the difference more in terms of technique, or do I feel that only good actors come from theater? I don't really subscribe to that, but I think for most actors it helps to have that training, particularly in comedy, because comedy, you can't have the crew crack up when you're actually rolling. It can only be in the rehearsal, and after I yell cut, then everyone laughs, which is great. But as an actor, to be able to gauge that, I think it really helps for comedy actors in film to have at least some kind of either stand-up or improv or sketch or theatrical training. Did that sort of answer your question? Okay.
In the back, yes?
Yes, hi. In the beginning, Sarah was discussing your experience on Indiegogo, and you were saying that, compelling video, the prices and levels. And what were a few other things? Were you completely done, or because I'm trying to get some of the
Oh, so we talked about Indiegogo, but we didn't talk about the successful one, which was the Kickstarter campaign, which is how Thumb happened. The other thing that I think we did differently for the Kickstarter campaign than for the Indiegogo campaign, I emailed everyone, probably 2,000 people in my, all my emails put together, and I was really surprised at the number of people who I never in a million years would have expected to contribute who did. Sometimes it's a little bit of quid pro quo, like people whose films or art projects or whatever I had donated a little bit of money to would do the same. But there were, people who I hadn't been in touch with in a long time, or people who I didn't even know whose email it was associated with, who would throw in $5 or $50 or whatever. So I think, as long as you're honest about what you're doing and what you're hoping to get from it, I wouldn't be shy about putting it out there. No one likes to ask other people for money. I don't know anyone who does. But I think it's important, if the project really means something to you, to put it out there, and I think you'll probably be surprised. Again, even if people are only throwing in $5 a pop, you get enough of those, and that's lunch for your crew, right?
Yeah, but here's the thing. I heard the difference between two, like Kickstarter. If you don't meet your budget, then it's shut down. Or Indiegogo, you get whatever money you make, you can still keep, but I guess there's a fee. I don't know.
Okay, so the last time I checked, and all of this is at least a year or two ago, I don't know what their policies are today. Kickstarter, you could be a for-profit company and use Kickstarter. You had to meet your goal within, whatever timeline you set. I think for Thumb we did 30 days or a month. We had a sort of backup plan, which was if we don't get it to, if we don't get to our goal within 2 days of that, or enough time for us not to have a panic attack, we'll, have someone's brother or something make up the difference, and then we'll just reimburse that person. So that's a secret. So we did that because yes, with Kickstarter you don't get any of the money if you don't meet your goal. With Indiegogo, my understanding is you still keep the, and Indiegogo, again, we were doing it because it was through a nonprofit. We were under an umbrella organization called Fractured Atlas, because we're waiting for our 501c3 paperwork to come through, and Indiegogo works with Fractured Atlas. And so the deal with Indiegogo was, if I'm recalling correctly, if you meet your goal, they take a certain percentage. If you don't meet your goal, you keep the money and they take a larger percentage. Yeah. I'm not sure if that's still how they function, but that's how they did it a couple of years back. And in terms of format and in terms of what you kind of want to put out there to potential donors, they're very, very similar.
Yes, Sarah, you mentioned the rehearsal process. Mm-hmm. How much is too much, specifically with team? Because wouldn't that sort of kill the performance, the improvisational aspects, especially if you shoot film as opposed to the theater?
Mm-hmm. I mean,
or does it depend on the story?
I think it depends. I would say more on the performers than on the story per se. I think there are some performers who, you know, you hit a certain point and it starts to go downhill, and any note you give is going to result in a disimprovement because they might fix one thing and then 3 other things that you liked are going to go with it. For me, I think that's one of the toughest things about directing, is not only gauging that, but gauging that for each individual performer. I mean, you know, I would know on set that, you know, this one's first take is gold and that one's third take is gold. So what do you do between the takes, and how do you?
Even though I was comfortable, I may be comfortable with my actors. I don't know if his or her performance is genuine or disingenuous. Specifically, going back to the storyline, you know, if I'm comfortable with those actors.
Well,
it's all about the story.
I think the other thing that I wouldn't hesitate to do is ask your actors honestly, like, how do you like to work? Do you like to rehearse, you know, a week before? Do you like to rehearse 3 times before we shoot? You know, you're almost never lucky enough to get everyone who has the same answer, but at least if you can start to get a sense of how people prefer to work, you can try to tailor your rehearsals a little bit to that. That would be, you know, otherwise I think it's a matter of just experience and trusting your gut.
Yeah, once you guys start shooting for a new filmmaker, is there shortcuts to like not use union or sneak on a location to shoot? Just to save money from permitting and union. I mean, is there any tricks to the trade in that?
Do it. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it.
In fact, the director, German director, Werner Herzog, was talking about he wanted to start a film school, and that was all he was going to teach. How to run from the police, how to circumvent union. This was going to be the entire curriculum. Because everything else you could kind of pick up. You know? But that stuff, that's what you needed to know.
And if you're asking the question, you got it in you to do it.
One can hope.
Yeah.
I saw there was a question there, yeah?
I have to apologize. I'm ignorant, and I'm going to be the one to ask the vulgar question, and I side to you, Mr. Didio, first. I guess I'll soften this by saying any number you tell me, I'll believe. Can you give me some ballpark idea as to what the budget for your piece showing at the festival is? Ballpark.
I mean, he already said that he wasn't comfortable.
I understand, so he can avoid this.
But as moderator, I must protect my panelists.
You ain't gonna get it out of me.
So I believe he's not going to speak.
I can give you. I got the same question at a panel I did yesterday, and the ballpark. And this is different. I didn't make a feature, and a lot of what I've done has been sort of either short form or, you know, web series stuff that, you know, is not super production value heavy. And I'm not saying we stuck exactly to this, but the general algorithm for that is about $1,000 a minute. So for every minute that ends up in the film, it costs ballpark $1,000.
That's a very fair. I think a very. Does anybody else want to?
That's as fair as I can be.
Yeah. For our film, the almost one is if you take away our investment that we're never going to get back. It's about $1 million, and the Twixen film is $5 million.
And these are films that are made for theatrical, really for theatrical
release. Yeah.
Release, which I think requires, you know, you to think on a bigger budget level.
I have a little anecdote.
Okay, please.
On the morning of our Canadian premiere, it was at the festival called Festival du Nouveau Cinéma. It's really a cool festival in Montreal. I heard an interview with a producer of a low-budget independent fiction film that was being premiered at the same festival. And they were saying, oh my God, you know, this is such an amazing film for this low budget that only costs $500,000. It's like magical what they've been able to do. And I said, oh my God, I am never going to say what my film costs. Because they're just going to think like I'm a complete loser. So, and nobody knows. And I think that's a good strategy. Because I don't think it shows. I'm really proud of that.
I mean, I did the Twixen film and $5 million, and the other one $1 million. I must say, it was a lot more struggle for me as a director with the $5 million thing.
Why is that?
Because in a way it's a more commercial film, it's more expectations, and it's more about the production, about the system, about the I don't know. In the small film I felt we kind of involved everyone, and that way we save money. In the other one we hired people. I think that is a key thing, really. If you want people to spend time and effort on your project, I mean, involve them, tell them the story, get them to kind of care. That's where you really save money, I believe. I mean, I want to care for some projects. And
it's also that people choose more to be part of the low-budget film because you're hiring people and you go for the professional ones with the best track record and stuff like that, and you know. And with the other thing, you have to present your project, and this is what we're doing, this is the story, and people that think that they could have, you know, profit on having that on their track record and would go for it. And so they choose your film not for the salary, but for the...
I understand. We're going to take one more question.
Are you all still shooting film or video?
Oh, God.
Yeah, we shoot digitally, yeah.
I shot like Super 8 and 16.
Response.
I mean, randomly, the feature, the first thing I ever directed was shot on film, which was terrifying as soon as I figured out what that clicking sound was.
It's the money going through the camera.
No, but everything I've shot since then has been digital.
I'm actually producing a feature now that we will shoot on film. It's getting difficult because
and my film I shot on Super 8, on 16, on Super 16. I have parts on 35, and I had really like low-end video, and then some super duper best camera. So it was partly. I mean, initially it was a choice that I didn't want there to be a difference between the found stuff and my stuff, so that you never know what's been shot when, but we associate certain media with certain time, right? So that, since that was so important in my film, I shot on everything, and that was the idea from the beginning. Yeah.
That's If there are, I've been told that we want to end just a few minutes early so that people could have a little meet and greet with you guys if you're willing to stick around for 5 minutes or so. So we're going to say thank you so much to our filmmakers.